Hi everyone, my name's Hayley Down and I'm a registered nutritionist specialising in female health, and today I'm going to be doing a full walkthrough of my report from when I did the Dutch test a few weeks ago, and I could not be more excited. I never really get to do anything like this where I'm looking at my own report, but I feel like it's something that I do with clients, so why not retest and actually have a look at what my hormones are doing and do a little bit of a deeper dive. So I'm going to lift the curtain on not only what the results mean, how to interpret the report, but also what we can actually do through nutrition and lifestyle to address what has come back. So let's get into it. So, what is the Dutch test? So, before I dive into my own report, let's just chat briefly about the Dutch test because not everyone has heard of it. And no, before you ask, it's not a test to see whether you are from Dutch heritage. It stands for dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. And honestly, it's one of the most advanced ways to assess your hormonal health. So, unlike a quick blood draw that just gives you that one time snapshot, Dutch testing shows how your hormones are made, used, broken down, and cleared. So, this means we can see things like if your stress response is overactive or flatlining, if you're producing enough of these hormones, which play a key role in things like energy, mood, fertility, and period regularity, how you're detoxifying your hormones, and even little clues in terms of things like egg quality, sleep, and also mood. It's a serious deep dive, and as I said, it can be really beneficial if you've got any kind of hormone imbalances or symptoms you're struggling with around your period. And if you've ever felt like no one's getting to the root cause or the bottom of your health issues, it may be the missing piece. And I'm also going to be giving you a behind the scenes peek at how I work with my clients, because if you've ever wondered what it's like to work with a nutritionist, this video is absolutely for you. It is only for educational purposes only. Obviously, the recommendations I go through are for myself only. I'm not diagnosing or treating anyone here. If you've got any medical concerns, please go and see your doctor, and there is a full disclaimer in the description below. But who am I and why am I here? So before we get stuck in, here's a little bit about me. I'm Hayley, I'm a mum of two, I'm 35 years old, and I'm based in Towcester in Northamptonshire, which is a real place. I started off with a sports science degree before retraining as a nutritional therapist at the College of Naturopathic Medicine in London. And after a decade in the corporate world, I totally get the stress of juggling work, life, and health. And since then, I have helped hundreds of women to transform their hormonal health through Hayley Down Nutrition, and I now run an online nutrition coaching clinic. I do a lot of functional testing, including the Dutch test, and I speak at quite a few corporate events as well. So why did I decide to test? So full transparency, I have done the Dutch test twice before already. It has been a long time. It's nearly been 6 years since I did my last test. And honestly, since then, life has been a lot. So in that time, I've had another baby. I am still breastfeeding, which I know personally can impact things like your hormones and your sleep. I left a very stable, comfy corporate job and now run my nutrition business full time. So took that leap. I'm juggling mum life and meetings, sometimes on very little sleep. And somewhere in there, we moved house and we got married. I got married to my now husband. So I guess I just wanted to see how my body was holding up and again, compare my results now from when I last tested. So current symptoms. So to give you some context before we jump into the results, because with clients, it's really helpful if I've got an understanding as to what their main symptoms are. I mean, my periods now are thankfully not very problematic. My cycles are still really regular, so every 28 days. And I don't really get that much PMS anymore, and definitely no major pain like I dealt with in my early 20s. I sometimes can get a little bit of spotting, but it's never more than 1 or 2 days, which is very normal for me. I have noticed in the last few years my periods have become a little bit heavier. They are still within the NHS normal range, which is as long as they're below 80 millilitres of blood loss per cycle, that is deemed as normal, but definitely heavier than what they were a few years ago. The big one for me, I guess I don't deal with stress as well as I did a few years ago. So my stress resilience, shall we say, is lower. Sometimes do get a little bit of fatigue in the afternoon, those 3 p.m. slumps, which I know a lot of my clients struggle with. And when it's bedtime, like half 9, 10, I am ready for bed. I am out like a light. My anxiety is up. I mean, I'll go into details in terms of a bit of health anxiety later on. But that's definitely become a little bit more so in the last few years. Same with my libido. It's definitely not where it used to be, although I do know breastfeeding can be a huge factor within that. Hair and nail health, a little bit more shedding than I would like. Not scary, kind of balding patches, but just hair health, definitely not what it once was. And I'm also really curious about my own cancer risk based on my genetics. So I lost my mum, for those of you that don't know, to ovarian cancer back in 2010. And there is a family history of cancer on her side of the family. So just looking at a few markers that have to do with cancer risk. So I'm not in crisis, I will say, but I know things could feel better. And that is exactly the point of testing. We don't want to wait for things to fall apart to take action. So let's kick things off with my results then. So this is the first page of the results. It's a summary page. So this page gives us a really cool zoomed out view of what's going on hormonally and whether things are sitting, I guess, within a sweet spot or kind of being turned up or turned down. So most of the markers have got these lovely little dials here, and you've got the lovely green premenopausal range. So obviously, depending on the age that you are when you do the test, you want to kind of be in a different range. But for someone of my age, 35 years old, ideally I want to be falling in this range here. We've got our lower limit star and then our higher limit star. So with the first page, we're looking at 3 major sex hormones. So we've got estrogen, which is actually estradiol, which is your most potent form of estrogen, progesterone, the hormone that increases after you ovulate, which keeps the lining of the womb nicely in place, and that declines, unfortunately, the older you get, ladies, and can have an impact on your mental well-being, and testosterone. So this is kind of the trailer before we do a deep dive into the full hormone movie. So just zooming into my estrogen, so we can see it's hovering towards the higher end of the range, which is definitely an improvement compared to my last test. It's come down a little bit, but when we compare it to my progesterone, it's still sitting slightly higher than where progesterone is sitting. So although both appear to be within the normal range, it is tipping me into a situation called estrogen excess. And this situation I see quite a lot in clients with things like PMS, heavy painful periods as well. And we want decent amounts of estrogen. I mean, it's the main form of estrogen produced in women kind of in their reproductive years. It's crucial for regulating your cycle, for fertility, I guess giving us curves and boobs, uterine lining growth and vaginal health. But like any good thing, too much can cause problems if it's not balanced by decent levels of progesterone. So we're going to be digging into why my estrogen be trending high, and actually how that's being cleared through the liver a little bit later, because it's not just about what you make, it's also about what you do with it as well. So progesterone, it is holding steady, thankfully. So mine came back within the ideal range, which is excellent news, confirms I've ovulated during this cycle, which is essential for cycle health and fertility. And again, it's lower than my estrogen, but it's still at a robust level, which is really, really positive. And it's also really helpful for your mental well-being. So it boosts GABA, which is kind of our calming neurotransmitter in the brain, really helps to support restful sleep, reduces inflammation, and just, I guess, helps you feel a little bit more balanced. If it was low, you may feel, especially in your luteal phase, more anxious, more irritable, maybe more wired yet tired. You might be more snappy and just a little bit wobbly, I kind of say to clients. So whilst I am glad I'm still making a decent amount, I would like to bring the estrogen down slightly and support healthy levels of progesterone. progesterone, especially given the past few years and the stress load I've been carrying, which I'm going to be getting onto. Now, this one really shocked me. So testosterone, I think, again, we hear about on social media, I definitely do anyway, because of the space that I'm in, about it being problematic when it's high. And that's definitely the case. A lot of my clients do have high levels of testosterone, especially those with things like polycystic ovarian syndrome, which can definitely cause issues with your cycle, with ovulation. It can, cause facial hair growth, intensified acne, and things like that. But actually, the same thing again, when it's too low, it can cause some issues. So it is technically still within range, but it's definitely on the lower end, which definitely matches up with how I've been feeling. A bit more fatigued, a bit less sharp, I guess not as frisky, shall we put it, as I used to be. And we definitely need it for things like energy production, for muscle maintenance, and we need it for kind of cognitive function, a strong libido, stable mood. So just generally like that, I've got this kind of feeling. So definitely things like stress can contribute, also zinc status, chronic illness, blood sugar dysregulation. So they're all things that I'm going to be looking at kind of within the plan. And I just wanted to share a screenshot of my old results just to show you how things can change over the years as well. So this is my cortisol picture. How exactly am I dealing with stress? So before we go into cortisol, just wanted to mention first up my DHEA, which is definitely the lower end of the range for someone of my age. So ideally we want this kind of sitting around 1300 as a minimum, and mine is, kind of nearly half of that. And this hormone is a building block to both estrogen and testosterone. So if you're low in DHEA, it's not just an energy thing. It can definitely impact things like your sex drive, mood, skin, immunity, and metabolism. It can also impact egg quality as well, so it might affect a fertility picture. So as I said, it is low for my age, and although I'm not in a crisis state, it's clear to me when looking at this set of results that my adrenals, so the organs that sit just above your kidneys and produce things like cortisol, have been overworked for too long, and now they are in kind of conservation mode. So low DHA symptoms associated, again, fatigue, low libido, and a lower resilience to stress. And for postmenopausal women, which I also see it low, it can be linked to things like heart disease and diabetes as well. So cortisol, this is where it gets really interesting. Again, it is a bit of a Goldilocks hormone. We do want it to spike in the morning and then taper off throughout the rest of the day. This is our kind of get up and go hormone, and it's our stress response captain. So it helps to regulate our energy, plays a role in metabolism. Also, it's a huge blood sugar balancer as well. So if it's low, that can be affecting how, I metabolize things like sugar from my food. It can impact things like inflammation and also the circadian rhythm. So it's kind of like an internal project manager, I explain to clients, just running everything on time. Essentially, my cortisol levels are kind of saying, nah, I quit. I mean, that's the kind of most basic way I can put it. My salivary cortisol total is also low, and also my metabolized cortisol. So I am getting that spike in the morning, but you can see it's really quite flatlined to the low range limit. So this is definitely impacting things like my energy levels, which isn't great. And this didn't happen overnight, this picture. So years of like the hustle culture, being a workaholic, broken sleep, emotional stress, I guess for me, launching and growing a business, parenting, and postpartum demands. If I've got any mums on here, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's all kind of adding up, and my body has adapted to, I guess, that chronic stress picture by down regulating cortisol as a protective mechanism. And at some point, your brain stops screaming at your adrenals to pump out more stress hormones and just kind of says, we need to calm down now. And that sounds really helpful on paper, but in real life, it feels like, constant fatigue, brain fog, afternoon crashes. For me, like at night, it's really, really low, and I go to sleep so quickly, which is definitely indicative of what's happening here. I've actually got quite low blood pressure. I found out I was meant to have a wisdom tooth removed in a few weeks, and I put myself forward for sedation because I don't like any dental treatment, and I didn't qualify, unfortunately, because my blood pressure was too low, and that may well be linked to my low cortisol. I'm having that investigated at the moment. You may have trouble bouncing back from illness as well if you've got low cortisol. Hair thinning, that picture can kind of come on here. So if you relate to any of that, this is definitely the place to start looking. And it's worth mentioning that with a blood test, you may be lucky enough to get cortisol tested, but generally it's just first thing in the morning. You're not getting that whole picture of what's going on throughout the day, and you're definitely not getting what your total cortisol production is looking like as well. So let's talk metabolism. No, not the calories in, calories out kind, but how your body is breaking down and processing hormones. So this is a really juicy part of the results, and try and stay with me. There is a lot of information here, and this part of the report actually tells us so much information, and it's an often overlooked part of hormone testing that gives us real insight into how things are working, not just what's there. So full transparency, again, this is a really confusing page, and I totally get that it looks so overwhelming. So I'm going to break it down for you step by step. So just try and stay with me if you can. The good news is that the creators of the Dutch test, Precision Analytical, have actually just updated the design of this page on the latest version of their report. I was just a week or so short of that being interpreted in the new report, so a little bit annoying, but it's fine. We're going to go with this one, and let's make sense of my results and kind of explain why this page really does matter when it comes to getting to the root cause of your symptoms. So for the good news, because there is positive steps to all of this, my progesterone levels are, quite solid. And what's even better is how I metabolize my progesterone. So I favor what we call the pregnedyl pathway, which is associated with more kind of neuroprotective and calming benefits. So this pathway boosts allopregnanolone, a powerful brain supportive metabolite that interacts with GABA. So it's kind of like your brain's natural chill pill, and this is really important for supporting emotional regulation, enhancing sleep quality, and reducing anxiety, and to a certain extent can also help to keep stress in check, especially in the luteal phase where we have those mood shifts. So although my cortisol levels are on the floor, the fact that my progesterone is high during this phase is probably helping my mental well-being quite a bit. So androgens is basically a fancy term used for your male hormone. So this is kind of the lowdown on my male hormone. So as we saw earlier, my testosterone levels are on the lower side. So we're going to be looking at a few other hormones as well, and metabolism markers, making just this picture even clearer. My DHEA-S, androstenone, and 5-alpha androstenediol, which is on the kind of next page, which I won't show you because it'll be too long, are all low. So this definitely tells us that my androgenic activity is just dialed down overall. And in terms of real life, these hormones are responsible and are crucial for things like energy, muscle maintenance, libido, motivation as well, hair health and bone density. And when these hormones and their downstream metabolites are low, it can just feel like you're running in low power mode. And this isn't just about kind of libido or getting really bulked up. It affects your mood and your mental clarity and just, feeling like yourself. So this low output likely ties back to my low DHEA levels that we saw on the previous page. So again, stress, the breastfeeding, maybe not nourishing myself with the right nutrients and taking my supplements, have all likely been shown to slowly drain that reserve over time. This is one of my favourite parts of the test. So the estrogen estrogen metabolism. And this bit on the first report I ever did blew my mind and actually changed my periods forever. Honestly, it's one of the most underrated and misunderstood parts of hormone testing, which is estrogen metabolism. You cannot get this done when you do a blood test. But if you are struggling with things like heavy, painful periods that are quite clotty, PMS, we want to make sure that the estrogen that you have got, especially if it's high, you're getting it out of the body safely and you're excreting it out. So via, the urine, sweat, or via bowel movements. So once your body has finished using up estrogen, it doesn't just magically disappear. It has to be broken down safely and cleared out. And how your body handles that process, it can make all the difference with those symptoms that I've mentioned. So this page of the Dutch test shows how your body processes estrogen through phase 1 and phase 2 estrogen detoxification. And again, just to reinforce, this is anything this is so much more detailed than anything you'd get from an NHS standalone hormone test. So phase 1 detox in yellow here. So this is the first phase where estrogen is broken down, and this is happening in the liver through 3 possible pathways. So you can see the green arrow, the red arrow, and the blue arrow. So 2OH here is the safest, least reactive, most protective. Like, we love this pathway. We really want the majority of our estrogen to be prioritized being broken down this pathway. We don't really want a lot of estrogen. I mean, you've got the kind of estimated percentages here, no more than 11%. We don't want any more than 11% being broken down this red pathway, which is the 4OH pathway, which is what I call the naughty pathway. So it's a very unstable type of estrogen pathway. It can be linked to things like DNA damage. It's very reactive if not cleared properly, and may increase hormonal cancer risk, so things like breast cancer. And then finally, the 16OH pathway. So this is more of a proliferative growth type of estrogen pathway, which can be too much of a good thing if it's going down that way kind of predominantly. So think tender breasts, endometriosis, fibroids, and things like that. So just in summary, it's good to see that the majority of my estrogen is being pumped down this pathway, which is exactly what we want. And definitely from my perspective, in terms of that lower cancer risk, that's what I'm aiming for. I mean, it could be slightly higher. Ideally, we want this arrow here on par with the kind of estrone one here. So adding in more brassica veg, which I'm going to talk about at the end of the video, is definitely going to be something that I want to be doing. But it's really positive to see that predominantly I'm going down this pathway here. I did want to just mention that I have actually got a smaller amount than I would like going down the 16OH pathway. It might sound like a win, but actually this pathway does play a vital role in things like vaginal tissue health, cervical mucus, and bone density, especially as I'm heading into potentially perimenopause over the next 5 to 10 years. So something I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on. And this is what I love about the Dutch test. It's not just a yes/no answer. It's kind of a story, which is why it's so relevant to hear your story as well as a client. And then looking at phase 2. So for me, this is where it all starts to go a bit wrong. So methylation, this process here is really where I'm struggling. So after estrogen is broken down, it has to be made inactive and safe via a process called methylation. So this is phase 2 of detox. And for me, this is where things really start to slow down. So you can see here, my methylation activity is really low, which makes sense. I've gone a step further. A few years ago, I ran a genetic profile and it confirmed that I've got what is called a slow comp gene, and this affects how effectively I personally can process and eliminate estrogen and also stress neurotransmitters like dopamine and adrenaline. So I tend to feel those effects of stress for a good few hours. I actually was involved in a little car incident. I'm absolutely fine. I was stationary and I kind of got hit by a lorry that was going past me on a country road on Monday. And I wear an Oura ring, so I track all my stress response, my heart rate, everything. And I checked the app that afternoon, and I'd actually been in like a stressful mode for 3 hours, even though kind of it was over within 10-20 minutes. Those hormones stayed high for me, and I wasn't surprised. So what does this mean? It's like trying to drain a bath with the water, but it's estrogen pouring in, but with a slow plug hole. So the water kind of, or the estrogen and the stress builds up and the system can't keep up. And in terms of symptoms, we maybe expect things like PMS, premenstrual anxiety, feeling overstimulated, feeling frazzled. You might have a poorer tolerance to stress or just chaos in general. And I will say I do take supplements to support my methylation activity, but I've not been for the last couple of months because I wanted to get a true baseline of how my body is doing without external support. So magnesium, for example, is something that I absolutely need in my life. And again, I'm going to run through the supplements I'm going to be taking at the end of this video as well. Phase 3 detox isn't on here, and it's the unsexy but crucial bit, and it's not in the report. But even if you are doing really well at phase 1 and phase 2, if you're not pooping daily, estrogen can be reabsorbed right back into circulation. So that's why gut health and regular healthy bowel movements are non-negotiable for hormone balance. And that's why I always include gut support in client protocols, especially if they are struggling with symptoms. And I just wanted to mention again, just to reinforce, this level of detail you don't get from a blood test. With the Dutch test, we get 13 estrogen markers tested in the luteal phase, which for a lot of women is when PMS, mood shifts, bloating, breast tenderness often flare up. And it doesn't just tell how much estrogen you have, but how you're clearing it. And for me, that was absolutely the missing puzzle piece. And this is why I use this test in clinic today with hundreds of clients. And just to finish up with a report, thank you if you are still with me, because I know it is very in depth, are your nutritional organic markers. So this is proof that food really is medicine, but also why testing kind of matters as well. So this is one of my favorite sections of the Dutch test, not because it's flashy, but often because it explains why your body isn't perhaps functioning the way it should. So these little organic acid markers give us kind of that behind the scenes look at things like your nutrient status, neurotransmitter health, a little bit of insight into things like gut function and sleep hormones, without needing like a cupboard or a graveyard drawer, a lot of my clients call it, full of supplements. So we can get really specific depending on what this area of the Dutch test reveals. So for me, actually it suggested that I have a biotin deficiency. So definitely one to watch, which explains a few things, including why my hair isn't quite what it used to be kind of pre-baby. We know it's a really crucial nutrient for hair and nail health, but also things like energy metabolism and blood sugar regulation. And as I said, my hair isn't falling out in clumps. It is still quite thick, but it's definitely not as, I guess, higher quality as it usually was. So I'm going to be focusing on more biotin rich foods and possibly some short-term supplementation to top things back up. Indican. So when I did this test for the first 2 times, this marker wasn't included, so I haven't got a comparison, but it's always an interesting one for me to be diving deep and looking at gut health. So this gives us a rough indicator of what we call gut dysbiosis. So that's essentially an imbalance in the bacteria within the gut. And although it is within the normal range between 0 and 100, I like to see this under 50, just because gut health is the foundation of hormone imbalance, immunity, estrogen clearance. So it's definitely something that's on my radar, and I struggled with IBS for years as well. I am considering doing another stool test to get a clearer picture of what's going on. You definitely don't need to spend lots of money with lots of functional testing all in one go. It's just something I've not done, again, one in a while, but I am going to be trying some other bits in the meantime. And just to finish off, a couple of markers still within the normal range, but if you look at where the levels came back in regards to the normal range, they are a little bit lower. So melatonin, which is your sleep hormone, and also dopamine, which is that kind of focus, drive, and reward neurotransmitter, is definitely lower than where I would like. Melatonin is your sleep hormone, but also a really powerful antioxidant. It's really important, definitely for things like cancer risk, and actually to a certain extent egg quality. And low levels aren't just about trouble falling asleep, they're also linked to your immune system as well. And as I said, given my family history and the fact that I'm still co-sleeping with an 18-month-old who definitely doesn't understand sleep boundaries. She's a lot better than my son, bless him. But yeah, it's kind of no shock to me that my melatonin is under par, under where I would like it to be. So I'm going to be looking at things like my evening routine a little bit more, my sleep hygiene, to support it where I can without stressing myself out too much. So what's next? All right, you've seen the data and you've seen my results, and testing alone doesn't change anything. You can't just run a Dutch test, skim the results, and expect your hormones to magically rebalance. Otherwise, it just becomes a really expensive bit of paper, in my opinion. And actually, I see the real magic happening when you put that data into action. And that is exactly what I help my clients to do. We take what's come back and we help to address those pain points and results by putting in some really cool, easy and realistic strategies that are evidence-based, personalised and practical to address what's come back. And just please know I don't offer one-off interpretations, because actually knowing what your hormones are doing is step one. I believe that the real results come when you have that plan that turns those insights into outcomes. So you've seen my results, you've seen my testosterone and cortisol, to be fair, absolutely on the floor. We know that I need a little bit of work with my estrogen, especially phase two methylation activity. And I've got some work to do with my nutritional organic acids as well. So this is the plan. I always have people and clients before they see me ask, what does a typical hormone balancing plan look like? And the truth is, honestly, it depends on a number of things: your symptoms, your goals, your test results, food preferences, your time capacity, cooking confidence, and also your budget as well. And yes, even things like how you handle stress. And I spend a lot of time every single week with clients on my program analyzing their food diaries. I look for kind of patterns, blind spots, and I guess just kind of subtle gaps that no tracking app or blog post could tell you, because no two women metabolize hormones or manage life in the same way. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a snapshot summary of the key areas I'm going to be focusing on over the next 3 to 6 months. Before you ask, I'm not going to be doing it all at once, and I don't believe that my client should be as well. But hopefully, this gives you a bit more of an idea as to how I work and the types of recommendations that I may give to my clients. So I am a nutritionist and I do eat well the majority of the time. Yes, okay, I do like a plate of nachos and the occasional brownie. But on the whole, I do have quite a whole foods and anti-inflammatory diet. I cook most of my foods from scratch. But my Dutch test showed me that my testosterone levels and also my DHEA are low. So food for me isn't just going to be about nourishment, it's about targeted support. So I really need to rethink my protein. I'm actually going to be increasing that to around 90, even to 100 grams daily, spaced across meals to support adrenal support, blood sugar balance, and muscle maintenance, which is extremely important as you head into your 40s, but also after postpartum as well. Zinc plays a crucial role in testosterone production. So I'm going to be adding things like pumpkin seeds, a bit more red meat to my diet as well. I have gone back to drinking coffee. I did give it up for a couple of years. I only have one every few days, but I really need to make sure I'm timing that well. I'm having it with my meals, and I'm not having it after kind of 1 p.m. ideally. I'm going to be adding in more choline, so things like eggs to support healthy methylation and estrogen clearance. And I just need to be really strategic with my carbohydrate timing to support my energy in the afternoons where those slumps definitely hit me hardest. So, in terms of detoxification, I am metabolizing estrogen well, but I am struggling to methylate and get it out of my system. So, my clients on here who are watching will know all about the importance of brassica vegetables to specifically help with estrogen detoxification. So, we're talking things like broccoli, watercress, rocket, cabbage, kale. They're really high in a component called sulforaphane, which is amazing for estrogen detox. I'm also going to be having a bit of an audit and looking at things in my environment. So I've recently got a new water filter. I've recently bought some new chopping boards. So finally got rid of my horrible plastic ones, just to review those home products, those cooking appliances that can help to reduce my toxic exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals. Obviously, I don't expect clients to clear out their entire bathroom, makeup, kitchen appliance cupboard. But over time, as and when things become unusable, that is the point to kind of take a little bit of a check and work out if you can go for something a bit more sustainable, but also more hormone friendly as well. I may also end up doing some further methylation further down the line. As I said, I am very conscious of my own cancer risk, and there are genetic panels that do more of a deeper dive into that process, so I can tailor my supplement even further, but definitely not at the moment. I've got a lot to be getting on with in the meantime. I mean, we know I need to relax. All jokes aside, my nervous system needs a bit of a reset and needs retraining. I need to not be doing kind of crazy hit workouts, or, to be honest, cold plunges. They aren't going to be good for me personally. I have started doing a bit more yoga at my gym, and that is definitely helping me to chill out. It's forcing me to actually have that downtime. And actually, I have been tracking things like my heart rate variability and sleep quality using my Aura ring, which has been really interesting. I've been doing that for the last few months, and it's been really insightful. And just generally, I know as a business owner and mum, I need to be creating, I guess, stronger boundaries around saying no, screen time, just to help things physically and mentally. Supplements, obviously, this is extremely targeted to myself, but again, I wanted to give you an insight. I will be led by the client on this one. Sometimes people don't have the budget for supplements. For me, I definitely see the benefit of adding them in to fill those gaps in my diet. For example, I'm not a massive fan of oily fish. I don't get it in my diet enough, so I know I need to supplement with it. And I'm layering in the supplements to, I guess, target those specific pathways rather than a generic approach. So I'm using things like magnesium glycinate, which is amazing for calming, cortisol support. And also because I've had my comp genetics tested, that's really supportive of that pathway support as well. I'm going to add in a methylated B complex and multi to kind of drive and help with methylation without overloading myself. I'm going to be adding in some vitamin C for some adrenal and detox support as well. And then some short-term biotin to really help with things like energy and hair health as well. So there's no over supplementing going on here. I'm not on a whole range. I haven't got a graveyard drawer. I'm not listening to influencers, but it's a really targeted protocol that is practitioner grade, medical grade supplements for myself. And also because I'm breastfeeding, we need to make sure they are all breastfeeding safe as well. Sleep. So although my sleep, I would say on the whole is okay. I mean, I do have an 18-month-old in the bed, as I've said. It could be better. My sleep hygiene could definitely be better because my melatonin is lower than what I would like. So I'm actually going to invest in a new pair of blue light blocking glasses. I had a pair, but my lovely daughter managed to snap them, which was lovely. So that's going to be really important when I am watching TV at night to kind of stop that blue light from coming in and blocking my melatonin. Morning sunlight is, for me now, a non-negotiable. It really helps that spike in cortisol in the morning, which I am getting, but it could be better. So absolutely for me, now we're going into summer, no sunglasses in the morning. And again, when I'm kind of doing my sleep hygiene, I need to pay definitely more attention to coming off devices a little bit earlier. And finally, movement. So you can see this is a really holistic plan. It's not just about diet, but because my testosterone is low, I definitely need to prioritize strength training. So I'm going to be upping that to 3 times a week to support my testosterone, general metabolism, and also confidence as well. I'm going to be adding in a little bit more yoga and maybe some Pilates as well to support just general cortisol production. And I'm going to be really honing in on listening to my body for those overtraining signs, because actually even a good workout, particularly when it's done late at night, can be a stressor on a depleted system. So just to kind of say, like, this isn't something you could Google. I mean, this is what you're investing in when you work with a practitioner, not just surface level generic advice, but a bespoke clinical strategy designed around your test results, your symptoms, your lifestyle, and your own physiology. So if you are nodding along to this thinking, where do I start with all of this? I want a plan like that, or I've had tests done and I just don't know what to do with them, you're not alone. And if you've made it this far, then thank you for staying with me. Then you already know that this isn't going to be about quick fixes, guessing games, or just taking generic advice off Instagram. This is really all about, honestly, truly understanding your body and working with it and not against it. And you've seen how I use personally functional testing like the Dutch test to uncover what's really going on beneath the surface, and how I then build a realistic, strategic, evidence-based plan around that data, not just for me, but for every single client that I work with. And you just actually might need the right guidance, from someone who actually gets it, someone who's been there, and someone that can help you connect the dots and hold your hand through that process as well. So I guess, yeah, if you're struggling with any of these symptoms, if you're just fed up of feeling wired yet tired, you're having issues with your periods, Definitely go in and book a free discovery call with me. There's no pressure to sign up to anything, but it's just a really good opportunity to find out if something like the Dutch test is right for you. Because actually, in some situations, like if you're on the oral contraceptive pill, if you've got the implant, I won't recommend it. So it's good to talk about what options are available to you, and I guess help you to better navigate things like PMS, fatigue, PCOS, fertility, etc. So you can book that via the website. So my website is www.hdnutrition.co.uk, but I also post tons of free information on my Instagram mostly. I'm also active on LinkedIn. If you want to email me, my details are here. But thank you so much if you've made it to the end. Thank you for being here. I hope you found this helpful, and I will catch you again soon.